So I'm going to talk about tropisms, which are basically responses that plants have to different stimuli. And there are really two tropisms that you need to know about. And I'll talk about them in particular in a minute. But a tropism is simply the idea that it's a stimulus that the plant reacts to. Okay, so its tropisms are the response of a plant to a directional stimulus. Response, sorry, of. And when I say directional stimulus, it means that the idea is that the plant will respond to the direction by either growing towards it or away from it. And so that can be either, it's called a positive tropism or a negative tropism, right? So a positive tropism is when the plant grows towards the stimulus. So for example, if you put a plant next to a window and the window is the main source of light, then you will notice that the stems will gradually turn towards that window. And so that's a positive tropism. If you put a plant, for example, if you were to turn a plant on its side for whatever reason you'd want to do that, then you would notice that the stem, right, so the stems usually grow up. And so if the stem, if you turn the plant so that the stem is on its side, it will again begin to grow up. And so that is a negative tropism because the plant is growing away of the stimulus. And in this case, the stimulus is gravity. So the plant grows away from the stimulus. And so the two main ones that you need to know are the ones that I just mentioned, which are the stimulus, the tropism of light, and the tropism of gravity. And these are called, so the stimulus, if the stimulus is light, the name for that is phototropism. And if it's gravity, then it's called geotropism. Oh, excuse me, holding in a sneeze. Okay, so and the idea is that when we talk about these stimulus, different parts of the plant can show positive or negative tropisms of these stimuli, right? So for light, as you can imagine, let me just put up here, the shoots or the stems have a positive geotropism. Or sorry, positive phototropism, which means they grow towards the light. All right. Roots often don't have any response, but some of them do show a negative tropism, phototropism, which means sometimes they grow. So I don't have room for that. Usually it's not applicable. Usually there's nothing there. Sometimes it can be negative. Sorry for my shorthand there. That doesn't make a lot of sense, but whereas shoots and stems for geotropism, they will always show a negative geotropism, all right? And the roots will show a positive geotropism. So you need to know this, you need to know these terms and this vocabulary, but it's also about understanding why that might be, right? So if stems have a positive phototropism, well, they're the part that's doing photosynthesis. They want to grow towards the light because then they'll be able to get more light energy and do more photosynthesis, right? And gravity, if you think about gravity is pulling usually towards the center of the earth, usually that's not where light's going to be, so they're going to have a negative response to that, a negative tropism. Roots, of course, they want water, and water is usually found in the ground, underneath the ground, so it would make sense that they would show a positive geotropism, right? So this is not a difficult idea, but it is important that you know all of the significant terms, okay? So phototropism, geotropism, and then the positive and negative, the idea of positive negative tropisms. Now, the other thing that you should know from this chapter, which if you're concerned is chapter 12, I believe, yes, is auxin, the role of auxin in the phototropic response of stems. Now, auxin is sometimes called a plant hormone, but I always put it in quotes because it's not really a hormone. And it bothers me that they call it this, but they do. And the reason it's not a hormone is because if you watched my hormone video last week or a couple weeks ago, I said that hormones have to be produced by a gland and they travel in the blood. Plants don't have glands and they don't have blood. So technically, auxin is not really a hormone, but it is a chemical that creates a response, all right, or that aids the response of plants to their surroundings. And it actually has a role in the phototropism of stems as well as the geotropism of roots, but you do not need to know that. You do not need to know about the root response. The only thing that is in your specs is the role of auxin in the phototropic response of stems. And so this is how it works, all right? The idea is that if I have, this is the first little shoot of a leaf, or sorry, of a plant coming out of the seed. So if I had the seed down here, this is called a coleoptile. You don't necessarily need to know this term, but it's perhaps nice to know, all right? And so the idea is that in a coleoptile, so this is pushing out of the seed before it has any leaves on it. If you, of course, have a light coming from up above, then the coleoptile will grow straight, all right? But if you have a light coming from here, right, if that's my light, and it's unidirectional, which means it's coming from one direction, then the idea is that the coleoptile will actually grow towards it. Let me get a different color to show you what will happen. All right, so as it grows up, it will start to grow towards that light. It will bend towards the light, all right? Now, how does auxin influence this? So this is a positive phototropism, phototropic response. And how does that happen? So the idea is that auxin is a chemical that's produced in the very tip of the coleoptile. And it diffuses down through the plant, okay? Down through the tip of, and if the light is coming from all around, if it's evenly distributed, then it will diffuse evenly. But if there's unidirectional light, auxin actually, the light that's shining on it actually interferes with the ability of this to diffuse, or your book says, and you're allowed to say that the light kind of destroys the auxin, and so you get more auxin on the dark side of the plant. So over here on this side, you're going to get more auxin. And the idea is that what auxin actually does in stems is that it causes, still seeing, okay. It causes cell elongation and growth. And so the idea is that the cells on the dark side, because they have more auxin, get larger and grow more. And so that forces a turn because these cells now are taking up more space. So it turns and towards the light. So the idea is that the phototropism of stems, cell elongation, oh, sorry, E. Let me write it out again. And so by having, so then the idea is that, yes, so it turns towards the light. It actually has the opposite response in roots. It actually decreases their growth, which is why you don't need to understand the different parts of how auxin works in different parts of the plant. But this is the one you need to know. The idea is that the light, you could say, destroys the auxin where it shines, and so you get more auxin present on the dark side, and that causes elongation and growth, which causes the plant or the stem to then turn towards the light. There's a lot of stuff in your book about how they discovered what auxin is, the idea that it's a chemical, that it's soluble, and so that it diffuses through the coleoptile. It's worth taking a look at if you want. It's come up very rarely in iGCSEs. It does come up occasionally, but usually they give you the information you need. So if you know this about auxin already, then that's what you need to know going into those questions.